We are now delighted to welcome to the stage Sandra Jackson Dumont, Director and CEO of the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art.
Good evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm speaking to you from the United States, and I want to begin by acknowledging the Tongva people, the indigenous people of this land where I stand or sit, and they are the original stewards of this territory. My name is Sandra Jackson Dumont, as stated earlier, and I am the director and CEO of the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which is currently under construction in Los Angeles, California. Here you see an image of what will be the doorstep of our institution. I want to thank Marriott Westerman and Anais Aguirre for the kind invitation to contribute another point of view on this vital topic of reframing museums. Today, I aim to speak with you about reframing museums for the present. By present, I mean now. Now being active and nuanced, recognizing that there is always a now. In other words, now is today and now is tomorrow. I will talk about the ways in which we can be dynamic, evolving, and engaged institutions present in the world and of the world, in the world and of the world. A world that is at once of our time and nonetheless moored in histories and therefore context. It is no secret that we are living through and in extraordinary times when hierarchies of all kinds are being challenged inside and outside of museums. The mere fact that we are able to consider how to reframe museums suggests the broad awareness that we are not simply going through a moment, but we are rather experiencing an ethical, social, and cultural seismic shift. The world is moving, so the question is, how will institutions, our institutions, move with it, move alongside it, move engaged with it, be of the world and be in the world? I don't pretend to have one-size-fits-all answers to anything. What I can do is take you into our thinking at the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. Our process of thought might be relevant to you and your colleagues because the questions we're grappling with are most likely similar to the ones you're facing at your institution. At the Lucas Museum, we are highly aware of being a part of a long trajectory of institutions that have changed the nature of art museums. I can mention the V&A, which set the model for exploring creativity across boundaries and borders of fine art and design. There's MoMA, which established a model for museums dedicated to the art of our time in all disciplines. There's the Whitney Museum of American Art, which was established on a national basis to champion American art and American artists specifically. There's the International Center for Photography, which was founded to collect, document, and teach a single artistic medium. And then there's my beloved Studio Museum in Harlem, an institution dedicated to Black artists and art. And it was founded a half a century ago as a part of an extraordinary wave of culturally specific institutions. In each of these cases, space was needed to be carved out. It needed a broad space for perceptions to be expanded and for the canon of art history to be reshaped, retooled, if you will, or to use the language of this conference, reframed for a contemporary moment and for a futuristic moment. This is the Lucas Museum as well. And we are carrying on this tradition or this trajectory or this lineage of dedicating oneself to exploring a major tradition. In our case, it happens to be narrative art, a tradition that you find almost across every era and all cultures. We believe that there is room for a diverse collection that expands conventional definitions of art. Simply put, we are dedicating rigorous art historical and communal attention to the ways in which people have used pictures to tell stories everywhere and at all times. Although the term narrative art first appeared in the mid-1960s, Visual storytelling has always been a central function of art. Much of the artistic output is narrative, across time, across place, conveying stories rooted in religion, myth, etc. Legends, histories, literature, or contemporary events. The narrative impulse has also thrived across, The narrative impulse has also thrived across non-figurative artistic traditions. Near the end of the 19th century, artists and critics in Europe and the United States advanced approaches to art that emphasized the formal qualities of work over narrative content. I'm showing you pictures that are derived from our collection, our evolving collection. This perspective on art history is often overlooked or under-recognized. These traditional modes of storytelling, as well as the proliferation of new narrative forms, such as the mass press, cinema, and advertising, have found their way into many aspects of everyday life. And we're excited about making sure that all of this narrative is shared. The role of narrative art within artistic practice has evolved and expanded over time, and storytelling continues to motivate artists in all media and resonate across culture. The Lucas Museum takes an inclusive approach to visual storytelling, as you can see from these images, exploring academically rooted and mass-produced art forms, as well as new modes of creative practice. In our curatorial approach here at the Lucas, we will rise above class-based distinctions between high and low art, encompassing all forms of visual narrative, including painting, sculpture, photography, video, performance, installation. Narrative art can provide a window into lived experiences, elicit emotions, ignite the imagination, or move us to action. We want to empower diverse audiences to connect and engage with artworks through the compelling stories they contain. Narratives are stories we live with. It's that simple. And for that reason, we believe that the perspectives that viewers bring to artworks inform the meaning and significance of narratives they convey. They inform how we view and understand the world, giving shape and character to real events, imagined realities, and systems of power, to be specific. Narrative art gives form to specific stories and meanings they contain. We are building a strongly democratic institution that believes deeply in the social role of art. Our leadership team speaks of art as an active experience, inviting visitors to speak, to ask questions, to venture opinions, to make their own connections, and to think about the impact of images on our world. We don't believe that this institution needs to be just the purveyor of knowledge, that we are the singular point of view. I think the future of museum lies in being engaged in a discourse, a dialogue about the function and form of these objects in our daily lives. Our co-founder, George Lucas himself, has written that the narrative art that he is engaged with embodies the beliefs and ideals that hold communities together. So art can be a binding force. He believes that art does not just reflect society, but that it has the power in and of itself to shape it. This all suggests that narrative art can make a difference in people's lives, and that the museum being built from the ground up as an agent of change is a great proposition. This is what we're doing here at the Lucas. This image you see here on the top is an image of the parking lot, 11 acres of it to be specific, and below is the design for what will be 11 acres of green space coming into an urban core, in dialogue, in discourse with our neighbors, specifically and in depth. This is an extraordinary statement to make, I believe. It's all, I guess I should say, it is all the more striking because the Lucas Museum is emerging in a time of reckoning, when everything is being challenged and is being changed. It's almost as if the Lucas Museum was envisioned for these times. I believe that institutions have the potential to be deeply democratic, and in all aspects of its work, whether it be reframing its approach to scholarship, retooling the museum as a malleable social experiment. In either of those cases, we believe that visual storytelling or narrative art can connect us to shape a more just society. Of course, it takes more than subject matter to carry out this democratic impulse. If a museum is going to be an agent of change, it needs to operate like one on all levels. Many, or dare I say, most of our institutions have been thinking about how to achieve diversity and inclusion among our trustees and staff, in our collections and exhibitions, in our way of building out our spaces, our physical spaces. We hope that they're built and maintained, and in how we are carrying out our policies and practices, we hope that those will actually connect to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Lucas Museum is building a 300,000 square foot building with an 11-acre sculpture park, not as a palace or a temple to work, but a temple to people who can engage with works in ways that are compelling to them and their lives, but also help us reform the way art and society intertwine. In some ways, the crucial test of diversity, equity, and inclusion might be found in the ways that museums proceed from here on out, how they connect their practice, objects, the way they approach things to people. I spoke earlier of the goal of being both scholarly and democratic. Our aspiration is to make virtually every space in our building and in the park outside a place for learning and engagement, and to treat every work of narrative art as the entry point to a world of dialogue, discovery, and empathy. We plan to be brave or unafraid. We plan to establish this institution as a compelling force for change, making the park and the museum's front stoop the social impact space where the museum can be in partnership with communities, starting with the neighborhoods closest to it, as this is at the heart of our mission. While so many are pointing to the COVID pandemic as the issue of the day, and believe me, it is the issue of the day, it is not the singular issue of the day. Institutions across the globe are grappling with how they will skill up for a completely new way of working, an anti-colonialist way of working, an anti-racist way of working. Museums often think they must make their art, their programs, their institutions relevant. But should we be flipping that conversation to ask what makes a life relevant? Where does that life intersect with artwork? Why has so much of our work been adjacent to the everyday lives of people as opposed to in dialogue with the everyday lives of people? Case in point, in June, George Floyd was murdered before our eyes, and museums struggle to find their voice in the discourse about human rights and brutal acts against Black people, brown people, trans people, under-resourced communities. Many institutions found themselves penning letters to the public, if you will, the vast, unnamed, really unfocused public. So I want to actually let you know that I struggled with writing a letter. And so I actually wrote a letter to my staff. And I'll end by reading that letter that I wrote to my staff, because I think it speaks to this idea of reframing the museum. Why did so many institutions write those letters? How do those letters actually manifest themselves in actions? In what ways do we find ourselves figuring things out on the spot? Is there a way that we can treat our work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and our relevance and engagement with the public in the same way we treat our rigorous approaches to art history and exhibition design and our collections and acquisitions process? So I'll read this letter to you, and then I'll ask a few questions at the end that are rhetorical, but I hope they're pointed enough because they're questions that we've turned on ourselves as an institution that is pouring the very fabric of its space as we speak. Dear colleagues, this is the letter. As I compose this note, I am admittedly struggling to find words to say, as I know we need a healthy dose of warmth during this societal season of bitter cold. Not only are we navigating what appears to be the second act of a global pandemic, complete with the threat of extended social isolation, but we are also facing significantly painful truths about the precarious state of our American democracy. While there have been advances in our nation's dealings with human rights, it's obvious that we are still a country fragmented and tormented by the diseases of inequality, inequity, and racial violence. I know it has been explicitly distressing to communicate the dimensions of anger, concern, and despair that many of us are feeling. I am challenged to wrap palpable language around my thoughts and emotions during these uncertain times. Even using the word uncertain seems somewhat inaccurate, dishonest even, because we are in fact quite certain about many things. We are certain that it is not safe out there. We are certain that our health and welfare are in question. Many of us are actually certain that some of our lives and some of us live in a constant state of fear and anxiety simply because of the skin we are in. Speaking for myself, I'm sadly certain that these days feel uncomfortably familiar and reminiscent of a loss that I know well. The difference is the pain and suffering that have perpetually crowded the everyday lives of Black people are now invading the precarious or the precious airwaves that so many depend on for entertainment, distraction, and fun. Many Americans are beside themselves having witnessed lethal violence against Black people unfold and live in live and in living color. Others are perplexed when they hear someone say, "I just had no idea this was happening." James Baldwin once said, "If one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection the most, and listen to their testimony." The veil has been lifted, and there's no escaping or undoing the racism, police brutality that we have seen with our own eyes. People of all kinds of people, are speaking openly in what my mother would call mixed company about matters that are normally reserved for those who sit around kitchen tables. Audre Lorde, a great poet, American poet, famously said, "Your silence will not protect you." She was speaking about how imperative it is for humanity to work together, to love one another indiscriminately, with well-being in mind in order to achieve universal freedom. James Baldwin, her comrade in the literary world, said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. Let their words be a lesson to us as we lift up the names of so many that were lost: George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Freddie Gray, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, and the countless others, Dominique Remy Fells, Tony McCade, Rayshard Brooks, Rhea Milton, and countless others who have lost their lives to unjustified aggressions and senselessness. Speaking these names into the air is important. It is equally imperative to acknowledge that they are symbolic representations of a cumulative roster that is so painfully long that it requires Herculean stamina and physical and emotional stamina to read. As we find ourselves desperately in search of solace, how might we as institutions and individuals allow the weight of our collective sorrow and fury to provoke us to be brave, not just be a part of a news cycle? Brave enough to ask difficult questions and lean into that discomfort, the discomfort of the answers in ways that bring to fruition a new world order, a reframing, if you will, one that speaks the truth and points to hope and catalyzes actions for a better today and tomorrow. In January of this year, I started my new role as the director and CEO of the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. A brand new institution currently under construction in Los Angeles's Exposition Park. As we pour the foundation for an institution dedicated to visual storytelling, we commit to creating a work culture and a diverse staff that is rooted in equity, equality, and racial justice. We have the opportunity to implement inclusive hiring practice, acquisition protocols, and cultural norms at the onset rather than retrofitting entrenched practices. So we are doing just that with a sense of urgency. I will end with a quote by Australian Aboriginal visual artist, activist, and academic Lilla Watson, who famously said, "If you have come to help me, you're wasting your time, but if you have come because your liberation is tied up with mine, let us work together." So I ask, what can we do together? What narrative will be used to explain our presence in this moment to generations to come? So as I asked our field, and I ask our field, as I asked my staff in that letter, how will we make museums places where people open their minds and hearts, be sites for confidence and joy? How can our work help to support the individual to make the individuals feel relevant and heard and seen? Is it too much to say that museums can participate in transformative thinking and actions through our work? Making lives relevant through things, objects, spaces, and programs is, I think, a much more powerful way to approach why we make things like objects, spaces, and programs in the first place. The Lucas Museum is dedicated to the art of storytelling. Through visual storytelling, we will expand the role of art and museums for society. Our work will radiate to catalyze more connected and empathetic spaces. We will inspire thought-provoking ideas and conversations that are relevant within and beyond our geographic spaces. We will be a place that will feel comfortable talking at once about what's happening in society and not see that as a political act, but see that as a humanistic act, as we feel talking about reframing the canon of art history and the role of museums in society. Our moonshot at the Lucas Museum is that the art of storytelling has the power to connect us to shape a more just society. What is your moonshot? Thank you very much.